The warning lights flashed red across the control panel of the Wanderer. Commander Jake Morrison leaned forward in his chair, studying the signal that had pulled them off course. His ship was small, meant for diplomatic missions, not rescue operations in the middle of nowhere. "It's definitely a distress beacon," said Lieutenant Claire Hoffman from her station. She looked worried. "But the signature is strange. Not human, not any species I recognize from the database." Jake drummed his fingers on the armrest. "They were 3 days from the nearest colony, deep in a nebula that most ships avoided. Whatever was out there was alone, just like them." "Can you get a visual?" he asked. Claire worked her controls, and the main screen flickered to life. A ship tumbled slowly through space, trailing debris and atmosphere. It was smaller than the Wanderer, its hull scarred with blast marks. Even from a distance, Jake could see it was dying. "There are life signs," Claire said. "Faint, but there." "Maybe 20 individuals?" She paused, checking her readings again. "Jake, there are 3 other ships approaching. Big ones. Their weapons are hot." Jake stood up, walking closer to the screen. The attacking ships were cutting through the nebula like sharks. They weren't there to help. "Krillian raiders," muttered Danny Price, the engineer, from the back of the bridge. "Those are slave ships." "They're hunting." Claire turned in her seat. "Commander, we need to leave. Now, we're not a warship. We have 6 people on this boat and some light defensive weapons. Those raiders could tear us apart." She was right. Jake knew she was right. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to jump away and report this to the nearest military post. But by the time help arrived, those people on the damaged ship would be dead or worse. "How long until the raiders reach them?" Jake asked. 12 minutes, Claire said quietly. Jake looked at the dying ship on the screen. He thought about the people inside, waiting for death or chains. He thought about going home and writing a report about how he had followed proper procedure. He thought about sleeping at night after that. "Bring us around," he said, "full speed, and open a channel to those raiders." Claire closed her eyes for a moment, then nodded. "You're going to get us killed." "Probably," Jake agreed. "But Danny, I need you to do something crazy with our weapons. Can you overload the plasma manifolds to make our energy signature look bigger?" Danny grinned. "I can make us look like a battleship for about 10 minutes. Then we'll either explode or go dark." 10 minutes is all I need," Jake said. The Wanderer accelerated toward the damaged ship. On the screen, the 3 Krillian raiders slowed, surprised by the new arrival. Jake's plan was simple and stupid: make them think twice, buy time, and hope they weren't willing to risk a real fight. "Channel open," Claire said. Jake stood straight, trying to look confident. "Krillian vessels, this is Commander Morrison of the Earthship Wanderer. You are targeting a disabled vessel in neutral space. Stand down immediately." There was a long silence. Then a harsh, clicking voice came through. "Human, this does not concern you. Leave or be destroyed." "I'm afraid I can't do that," Jake said. "That ship is now under Earth protection. Any attack on it is an attack on us." The Krillian laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You have 1 small ship. We have 3 warships." "Do the math, human." "I did," Jake said. "And here's what I calculated. You're raiders, not military. You take easy prey. But if you attack us, even if you win, you'll take damage. Maybe lose a ship, and then you'll have Earth hunting you across every system." "Is 1 cargo of slaves worth that?" He was bluffing. Earth didn't have the resources to hunt pirates across the galaxy. But the Krillians didn't know that. "Plus," Jake added, "our reinforcements will be here in 8 minutes. A full battle group? You really want to stick around?" Another silence. Jake could feel sweat running down his back. On the screen, the raiders held position, clearly talking among themselves. "They're scanning us," Claire whispered. "Danny, they're going to see through the fake signature." "Make it look like we're charging weapons," Jake said. "Everything we have." The Wanderer's lights dimmed as power rerouted to the weapon systems. It was all show, but it looked good. Finally, the Krillian voice returned. "You are either very brave or very stupid, human. We will remember this." The 3 ships turned and accelerated away, disappearing into the nebula. Jake let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Get us to that damaged ship," he ordered. "Claire, try to establish communication." As they approached, the alien vessel looked even worse up close. Whole sections were torn open to space. But as Claire worked her communications array, a weak signal came through. "This is Navigator Theshva of the Velkin Collective," a tired voice said. "We thought we were dead. You saved us." "Not yet," Jake said. "But we're going to. Can you tell me what you need?" Over the next hour, Jake learned that the Velkins were a small species, barely known in the galaxy. They had been transporting medical supplies when the Krillians attacked. Their reactor was failing, which meant life support would go next. "I'm going over there," Jake announced. "The radiation levels are deadly," Claire protested. "Their reactor is cracked. You'll be exposed." "Then I better work fast," Jake said, already heading for the airlock. "Danny, grab the repair kit." "You're coming with me." They crossed to the Velkin ship in spacesuits, carrying what tools they had. Inside, Jake found the Velkins huddled in the safest sections. They were tall and thin, with skin like polished stone. Theshva met them, her large eyes filled with gratitude and disbelief. The reactor room was a nightmare. Alarms screamed, and Jake's suit immediately warned him about radiation. He had maybe 30 minutes before the exposure became lethal. "Talk me through it," he said to Danny over the radio. They worked together, Jake's hands steady despite the danger. Welding, rerouting, patching, the minutes crawled by. His suit's warnings became more urgent. "Jake, you need to leave," Claire's voice crackled in his ear. "Now, almost done," he grunted, sealing the last connection. "There, Danny, fire it up." The reactor hummed, stabilized, and held. The lights on the Velkin ship brightened. They had done it. Back on the Wanderer, Jake collapsed in the medical bay. The doctor gave him drugs to counter the radiation, but he would feel this for weeks. It was worth it. Before they parted ways, Theshva came aboard. She approached Jake with ceremony, pressing her long fingers to his forehead and then her own chest. "You gave us life when you had no reason to," she said. "You risked everything for strangers. In my culture, this creates the echo of gratitude. We will never forget. Humanity will never be forgotten." Jake, tired and sick, just nodded. "Just help someone else someday. That's all I ask." As the Velkin ship limped away toward safety, Claire stood beside Jake's bed. "That was the stupidest, most reckless thing you've ever done," she said. Jake smiled weakly. "Probably. Those Velkins worship you now. They'll forget," Jake said, closing his eyes. "Everyone forgets, but he was wrong. The Velkins never forgot." And 16 years later, that simple act of kindness would change the fate of the entire galaxy. The message came through on every channel Earth was monitoring. It was short, written in simple words, but it made Kevin Shaw stop breathing for a moment. "To humanity, you are not alone. The Velkin Collective stands with you." Kevin immediately tried to contact the Velkins. When Theshva's face appeared on the screen, he could see how old she had become, but her eyes were bright. "Ambassador Shaw," she said warmly, "I believe you are wondering why a small species like mine would stand against the Zothran. With all respect, Elder Theshva, I'm grateful, but I'm also confused. This will make you enemies. The Zothran might turn on you next." Theshva made a sound that might have been laughter. "Do you remember Commander Morrison? The man who saved my crew 16 years ago?" Kevin nodded. Jake Morrison was retired now, living quietly on a colony world. "He risked his life for strangers," Theshva continued. "He gained nothing from helping us. When I asked him why, he said it was the right thing to do. Just that, the right thing." She leaned closer to the screen. "We Velkins believe that debts of honor must be repaid. But more than that, we believe his answer was correct. Some things are worth doing simply because they are right. But Elder, this isn't just about returning a favor. This is war." "Yes," Theshva agreed. "Which is why we are not coming alone." Over the next week, more messages arrived. The Sorrenti engineers announced they stood with humanity. Then the Lethar Mystics. Then the Broken Star Mining Collective. The species Kevin had barely heard of, one by one. 73 different species declared their support for Earth, Most of them were small, nothing like the major powers. But together they represented billions of people and thousands of ships. Kevin was overwhelmed. Why? Why are they doing this? A young Velkan diplomat named Keshri was assigned to work with Earth. She explained while sitting in Kevin's office on the Coalition station. We asked ourselves the same question, Keshri said. So we investigated. We looked at humanity's history in the galaxy. Do you know what we found? What? 17 different occasions where humans helped other species with no benefit to themselves. Medical aid given freely. Research shared without patents. Ships risking combat to defend strangers. Resources provided to struggling colonies. Keshri pulled up a display showing incident after incident. You have a reputation, Ambassador Shaw. Humans are known for being dangerously generous. Kevin stared at the list. He recognized some of the incidents, but not all. I didn't know we had helped so many. That is what makes it remarkable, Keshri said. You helped without keeping score, without expecting anything back. In a galaxy where everything is a transaction, humans gave gifts, and now they're returning the favor. Some are, Keshri admitted. But others are joining for a different reason. They see humanity as proof that there is another way to exist in this galaxy. A way based on cooperation instead of domination. Lieutenant Ryan Cooper was assigned to coordinate intelligence between Earth and the new allies. It was a massive job. 73 species meant 73 different communication styles. Military procedures and technologies. Ryan worked from a station that the Velkans had set up, bringing together representatives from each species. At first, it was chaos. Nobody knew how to work together. The Lithar want to fight in a spiritual formation, Ryan said during a briefing with Admiral Patrick. The Sorrenti want to use coordinated engineering strikes. The mining collective wants to ram ships into the enemy. How do I make this work? Patrick thought for a moment. Don't try to make them all fight the same way. Use their strengths. Let each group do what they do best, but make sure they support each other. It was good advice. Ryan started building a coalition strategy that used each species' abilities. The Lithar knew ancient jump routes that could move ships quickly. The Sorrenti could upgrade human weapons with their engineering knowledge. The mining collective had ships designed to crack asteroids, which could be modified into rams. Captain Lisa Grant was given command of a mixed squadron. Her Defiant was joined by 2 Sorrenti engineering ships, 3 Lithar temple cruisers, and a dozen smaller vessels from various species. The first training exercise was a disaster. The ships couldn't coordinate. Communication was slow. Tactics didn't mesh. Lisa felt like she was herding cats, but slowly things improved. The crews started to understand each other. Human tactical creativity combined with alien knowledge. The Sorrenti engineers worked with human technicians, creating weapon modifications that neither species could have designed alone. Lisa found herself impressed by the Lithar pilots, who could navigate through impossible spaces using their ancient knowledge. The mining collective crews were fearless, willing to put their ships between enemies and their allies. We're becoming something new, Lisa told her first officer after a successful training run. None of us are as strong as the major powers, but together we might have a chance. Meanwhile, the Zathran watched with growing concern. They had expected Earth to surrender or die alone. Instead, they saw a coalition forming, species working together in ways that made no sense. The Zathran, admiral in charge of the invasion fleet, called a meeting with his officers. This changes nothing, he said firmly. These are minor species with inferior technology. We have crushed rebellions before. We will crush this one. But privately he increased his fleet size. Better to be certain, back on Earth, Jake Morrison received a visitor. Veshva herself had made the long journey from the Velkan homeworld. She was so old now that she needed help walking, but she insisted on meeting him in person. They sat in Jake's small garden, drinking tea. Jake was in his 50s now, his hair gray, his body marked by the radiation exposure from years ago. You started all this, Veshva said simply. One act of kindness, and now the galaxy is choosing sides. Jake shook his head. I just helped some people who needed it. That's all. That is everything, Veshva corrected. In a universe where most species ask, "What will I gain?" you asked, "What is right?" That question changed the galaxy. I'm just one person. Yes, but you are human. And we have learned that one human making one choice can shift the universe. Veshva set down her tea. That is why we fight. Not just to repay a debt, but to preserve the idea that kindness matters. That honor is real. That there is a better way. Jake was quiet for a while. A lot of people are going to die in this war. Yes, Veshva agreed. But they will die for something that matters. The Zathran offer peace through submission. We offer something harder, but better. Freedom through solidarity. As the deadline approached, the coalition gathered. 73 species sent their ships to the Sol system. The fleet that assembled was strange and wonderful. Ships of every size and shape, technologies from across the galaxy, crews that barely spoke the same languages. Admiral Patrick stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship, looking at the display. Thousands of ships filled the screen. It wasn't the biggest fleet in the galaxy, but it might be the most unified. They came, he said, still amazed. They actually came. They had debts to pay, Kevin said, standing beside him. And more importantly, they had a choice to make about what kind of galaxy they wanted. Think we can win? Kevin looked at the fleet, at all those different species ready to fight for Earth. I think we're going to find out if kindness is stronger than fear. The Zathran invasion fleet was coming. They would arrive in 2 days. And for the first time since this crisis began, Earth had hope. Not because they had bigger guns or better shields, but because they had something the Zathran had forgotten existed. They had friends. 16 years passed quickly for humanity. Earth had grown stronger, building more ships, establishing more colonies. They were no longer newcomers to the galaxy, but they were still small compared to the ancient empires that ruled the stars. Captain Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the stars slip past. Her ship was one of Earth's best, a battle cruiser with advanced weapons and a crew of 200. She had been patrolling the Outer Rim for 3 months, checking on human colonies and showing the flag. Captain, we're receiving a general broadcast from the Galactic Coalition, her communications officer said. Priority 1? They're asking all member species to send representatives to the core immediately. Lisa frowned. Priority 1 meant serious trouble. What's it about? They don't say. Just that it's urgent. Back on Earth, Ambassador Kevin Shaw was already in a shuttle heading to the Coalition headquarters. He was a diplomat, trained to stay calm, but the message had worried him. The Coalition never called emergency sessions unless something major was happening. The Great Assembly Hall was massive, built to hold thousands of different species. Kevin took Earth's seat, looking around at the representatives from hundreds of worlds. Everyone looked nervous. The session began, and the Zathran ambassador stood. The Zathran were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, their empire vast and powerful. Their technology was thousands of years ahead of Earth's. When they spoke, people listened. The Zathran Dominion has a proposal, the ambassador said, his voice cold and formal. The galaxy is chaotic. Too many small species squabble over resources. Too many conflicts waste time and energy. We propose a new order. Young species will accept protectorate status under established empires. They will benefit from our protection and wisdom. In return, they will follow our guidance. Kevin felt his stomach drop. Protectorate status was just a nice word for giving up freedom. The Zathran wanted to take over without calling it conquest. And if we refuse? Asked the representative from a nearby world. The Zathran ambassador smiled, but it was not friendly. Then you will face the consequences of standing alone in a dangerous galaxy. Over the next weeks, the galaxy fell apart. The major powers, the species with old empires and massive fleets, met with the Zathran privately. One by one, they made deals. They would stay independent, but they wouldn't interfere with the Zathran's expansion. In exchange, the Zathran wouldn't threaten them. It was smart politics. But it left species like humanity completely alone. Kevin worked day and night, calling in every favor Earth had. He met with ambassadors, sent messages, pleaded for support. But doors kept closing. The big powers didn't want to risk war with the Zothran. The small powers were too scared to unite. "We're out of options," Kevin told Admiral Patrick Hayes during a secure video call. "I've talked to everyone. Nobody wants to help." Patrick was the commander of Earth's entire defense fleet. He was a good officer, experienced and smart. But he knew the math. "How long do we have?" "The Zothran have given us 6 months to accept protectorate status. After that, they'll come with their fleets." Patrick looked tired. "I've been running simulations. Even if we pull back every ship to defend Earth, even if we fight perfectly, we'll last maybe a week. They have technology we can't match. Ships we can't hurt. Numbers we can't counter, so what do?" Kevin asked. "We prepare. We fight. And we hope for a miracle." Patrick leaned forward. "But Kevin, you need to understand. We're probably going to lose. Earth might fall." Kevin closed the call and sat in his empty office. Outside his window he could see Earth, beautiful and blue. Billions of people down there living their lives, not knowing that their world was about to be invaded across the galaxy. On the Velkan homeworld, HFY was very old now. Her stone-like skin had turned gray and she moved slowly. But her mind was still sharp and she remembered everything. She called for a great assembly, the first in 20 years. Velkans came from across their small territory, curious about why the honored elder had summoned them. HFY stood before them, her voice strong despite her age. "I come to speak of debt and honor. 16 years ago, humans saved my crew when they had no reason to. They risked their lives for strangers. They asked for nothing in return." The assembly listened quietly. Now, those same humans face destruction. The Zothran demand their surrender. The galaxy has abandoned them. And we must decide what kind of people we are. A younger Velkan stood. "Honored elder, we respect the debt. But we are not warriors. We have no great weapons, no powerful fleet. What can we possibly do against the Zothran?" HFY smiled. "We may not have weapons, but we have something else. We have relationships. We have trust. For centuries, we have been honest brokers, helping species talk to each other, making fair deals. Everyone in the galaxy knows Velkans keep their word." She paused, looking at each face in the assembly. "We can call in our own debts. We can remind the galaxy of what humanity has done, because we are not the only ones who owe them." Over the next months, Velkans spread across the galaxy. They went to the Sorrenti, master engineers whose homeworld had once faced a plague. Humans had shared their medical research freely, asking for nothing. 500 Sorrenti children lived because of that gift. They went to the Lethar mystics, whose temple ships had been attacked by pirates. Human patrol vessels had defended them, losing 3 ships in the battle. The Lethar had offered payment, but the humans refused, saying it was the right thing to do. They went to mining collectives, merchant guilds, scientific academies. Everywhere they went, they found the same pattern. Humans helping without asking for rewards. Humans sharing knowledge freely. Humans risking their lives for strangers. It was strange behavior in a galaxy where everything was a transaction. Most species helped others because they expected something back. They made alliances based on profit and power. But humans seemed to help just because they could. "It makes no sense," one Sorrenti leader said to the Velkan messenger. "Why did they help us? We had nothing they needed." "That is why they helped," the Velkan replied. "Because you needed it. That is how humans think." Slowly, quietly, species began to talk to each other. Small species that had never worked together. Minor powers that the big empires ignored. They shared stories about humans, about strange acts of kindness that made no strategic sense, and they began to ask questions. If humans could help others without expecting profit, could they do the same? If humans could risk everything for strangers, what did that say about honor? About what really mattered? Meanwhile, Admiral Patrick Hayes prepared Earth's defenses. He pulled ships back from the colonies, concentrated his forces, and drilled his crews until they could fight in their sleep. He knew it wouldn't be enough, but he would make the Zothran pay for every inch of space. Captain Lisa Grant brought the Defiant home, joining the defensive fleet. She met with Patrick, and he was honest with her. "We're going to lose, Lisa. The Zothran will come with hundreds of ships. We have maybe 60 that can fight. But we're going to show them that humans don't surrender easily." Lisa nodded. "My crew is ready, sir. We'll fight until we can't anymore." Kevin Shaw made one last attempt at diplomacy. He sent a message directly to the Zothran leadership, asking for more time, offering concessions. The reply was brief and cold. "You have 3 months. Accept our terms or face the consequences." The countdown had begun. Earth prepared for war it couldn't win. And humanity stood alone, or so they thought, because across the galaxy, in meeting rooms and council chambers, on ships and space stations, something impossible was happening. Species that barely knew each other were forming alliances. Small powers were sharing resources. And at the center of every conversation was the same question. If humanity could stand for something better than profit and power, could they do the same? And if humans were about to fall, what kind of galaxy would be left? The Zothran fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system exactly on schedule. 300 warships, each one a masterpiece of ancient technology. They had conquered dozens of species over the centuries. This was supposed to be routine. Admiral Vexler commanded the invasion fleet from his flagship. He reviewed the intelligence reports with growing confusion. His scouts had detected the coalition fleet, but the numbers made no sense. Over 2,000 ships? He said to his tactical officer. "Where did they come from?" "Multiple species, sir. The Velkans, the Sorrenti, the Lethar, and 70 others. Most are minor powers." Vexler dismissed it with a wave. "Minor powers with minor weapons. Our ships are worth 10 of theirs. We proceed as planned." But as the Zothran fleet moved deeper into the system, something unexpected happened. The coalition didn't wait for them to reach Earth. Instead, they came out to meet them. Captain Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the Defiant, her mixed squadron around her. "All ships, this is Grant. Remember the plan? We're not trying to win. We're trying to make them pay for every inch." The first engagement was small, just a probe to test the enemy. Lisa led her squadron in a strike against the Zothran vanguard. 3 human ships, 2 Sorrenti engineering vessels, and a Lethar cruiser against a dozen Zothran warships. The Zothran opened fire first, their weapons powerful and precise. But the coalition ships moved in patterns the Zothran hadn't seen before. The Lethar cruiser danced through impossible angles, using their knowledge of space to evade fire. The Sorrenti ships had modified their shields based on human designs, creating a defensive matrix that shared energy between all the vessels. Lisa's Defiant charged straight at the enemy, weapons blazing. It was a human tactic, aggressive and unexpected. While the Zothran focused on her, the other ships hit them from different angles. They destroyed 2 Zothran ships and damaged 3 more before retreating. The coalition lost 1 vessel, a mining ship that rammed an enemy cruiser after taking critical damage. Vexler watched the battle report with growing annoyance. "They fight well for primitives, but they cannot win. Order the fleet to advance in force." The next battle was larger. Admiral Patrick committed a third of his fleet trying to slow the Zothran advance. The fighting was brutal. Zothran weapons tore through shields. Coalition ships exploded in brilliant flashes, but something strange was happening. When human ships were damaged, Sorrenti engineering crews risked everything to reach them and make repairs. When Lethar vessels were surrounded, human captains launched desperate attacks to save them. Species that had never fought together before were dying for each other. Lieutenant Ryan Cooper coordinated the defense from his intelligence station. He had data flowing in from 73 different sources, each in their own format. Somehow he made sense of it. "Admiral, the Zothran are concentrating on our left flank," he reported. "But the Lethar just found an old jump route that puts them behind the enemy formation." Patrick saw the opportunity. Tell the Lethar to take it. Lisa, I need your squadron to hit the Zathran from the front. Make them think that's our main attack. The plan worked. The Lethar appeared behind the Zathran fleet using their ancient knowledge. The enemy formation broke apart, trying to defend two fronts. In the chaos, the coalition fleet managed to destroy a dozen more Zathran ships, but the cost was high. The coalition lost nearly 50 vessels. Patrick looked at the casualty reports, each one representing hundreds of lives. We can't keep trading ships like this, his tactical officer said. We're losing more than they are. I know, Patrick said quietly. But we're teaching them something. We're teaching them that we won't quit. Across the galaxy, other species were watching the battle. The major powers that had made deals with the Zathran, that had abandoned humanity, they saw something they didn't expect. They saw minor species fighting with a unity and determination that shocked them. The Karax Empire had been one of the first to make a deal with the Zathran. Their ambassador watched the battle reports with growing discomfort. This is madness, she said to her council. 73 species risking everything for humanity. Why? One of her advisors pulled up the records. It appears humanity has helped most of these species at some point. Medical aid, military support, scientific cooperation? Always given freely. And now they're returning the favor, the ambassador said slowly. Even though it might destroy them. It makes us look rather poor by comparison, another counselor noted. We abandoned our allies for our own safety. The Karax were not alone in their doubts. Across the galaxy, species that had chosen neutrality began to question that choice. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, the battle continued. The Zathran kept pushing forward, and the coalition kept making them pay. Every day brought new fighting, new losses, new pain, but something else was happening too. The crews from different species were bonding. Human engineers worked alongside Sorrenti technicians. Lithar pilots taught human navigators their ancient techniques. Mining collective crews shared their fearlessness with everyone. Lisa Grant found herself commanding not just ships, but friends. When her weapons officer was injured, a Sorrenti volunteer took his place. When a Lethar ship and her squadron lost its captain, Lisa personally coordinated their retreat. We're not just fighting together, she told Ryan during a brief rest period. We're becoming something new. Something better than any of us were alone. Jake Morrison, though retired, couldn't stay away. He volunteered to help with civilian evacuations, getting people off Earth to safer locations. But mostly, he watched the battle reports with growing amazement. Neshva stayed with him. She was too old to travel back to the Velkan homeworld, and she wanted to see how this ended. Did you ever imagine this? Jake asked her, watching a display showing the coalition fleet. No, Neshva admitted. When you saved my crew, I thought it was just one good action. I never dreamed it would lead to this. I just did what felt right. Exactly. And that is why this matters. You did not calculate advantage. You did not weigh profit. You just helped because you could. She pointed at the display. Now, 73 species are doing the same thing. Helping because they can. Fighting because it is right. The battle reached a critical point. The Zathran had pushed deep into the system, only 2 days from Earth. Admiral Vexther prepared for the final assault. His fleet had taken losses more than he expected, but he still had overwhelming force. Then something unprecedented happened. A message came through on all channels. The Karax Empire, one of the major powers, announced they were sending aid to the coalition. Not a full military commitment, but ships carrying supplies, medical equipment, and technical support. Then the Telex Union made a similar announcement. Then the Meridian Collective, Vexther watched as his careful political isolation of humanity crumbled. The major powers weren't joining the fight directly, but they were supporting the coalition in other ways. And their message was clear. They did not support the Zathran conquest. For the first time in his long military career, Vexther felt uncertain. He had the power to win this battle. But at what cost? And what would happen after? The galaxy was watching. And the galaxy was beginning to choose sides. In his command center on Earth, Admiral Patrick received the news about the major powers offering support. He allowed himself a small smile. "They're scared," he said to Kevin. "Of us?" Kevin asked, surprised. "No, of what we represent. We're showing them that there's another way. That small species can unite. That kindness can be stronger than fear." Patrick looked at the tactical display. The Zothran can still win this battle, but they're losing something more important. They're losing the moral argument. Outside, in the darkness of space, the battle continued. Ships exploded and people died. But something else was being born too. A new kind of alliance, built not on fear or profit, but on something the galaxy had almost forgotten. Hope. The final battle for Earth began at dawn, though in space there was no real dawn. Admiral Vexler committed his entire remaining fleet, nearly 200 warships, to one massive assault. He would end this today. Admiral Patrick watched the enemy approach on his displays. The coalition fleet was battered, having lost hundreds of ships over weeks of fighting. But they were still there, still ready. Jake Morrison had been called out of retirement one last time. Patrick needed every experienced officer he could get, and Jake knew how to make desperate tactics work. Now he stood in the command center, coordinating small strike groups. "They're going to try to overwhelm us with sheer force," Patrick said, studying the Zothran formation. "They'll push straight through to Earth." "Then we don't let them through," Jake said simply. "Every ship, every weapon, everything we have. We hold the line." The Zothran fleet came in waves. The first wave hit the coalition defensive line like a hammer. Ships on both sides exploded. The void filled with debris and fire. Captain Lisa Grant led her squadron into the thickest fighting. The Defiant had been repaired 3 times already, held together by Sorrenti engineering and human determination. Around her, ships from 73 different species fought as one. "Defiant, we have enemy cruisers breaking through on your left," Ryan Cooper's voice came through. He was coordinating from the command station, processing information faster than anyone thought possible. "I see them," Lisa replied. She turned her ship, calling to her squadron. "All ships, follow me in. Hit them hard." The Lithar cruiser beside her moved with impossible grace, dancing through weapons fire. A mining collective ram ship accelerated past, its crew shouting battle cries in their own language as they crashed into a Zothran destroyer. The battle was chaos, but it was organized chaos. Every species fought with their own style, but they supported each other perfectly. When human ships attacked aggressively, the Sorrenti covered them with shields. When the Lithar found openings with their navigation skills, human and Velkan ships exploited them. On the Zothran flagship, Admiral Vexler was growing frustrated. His fleet should be winning. They had better weapons, better shields, better everything. But the coalition fought with something his ships lacked. "They should be breaking," his tactical officer said, confused. "We have destroyed 200 of their ships. They should surrender." "They are not fighting for profit or conquest," Vexler said, beginning to understand. "They are fighting for each other. For their friends. That is much harder to defeat." The battle raged for hours. The space around Earth became a graveyard of ships. The coalition was losing more vessels, but they were making the Zothran pay for every meter. Then something shifted. The major powers that had been sending supplies and support announced they were sending military vessels too. Not huge fleets, but enough to matter. The Karax Empire sent 20 ships. The Telex Union sent 30. They didn't join the Zothran. They joined the coalition. Kevin Shaw, watching from the command center, felt tears in his eyes. The major powers were finally choosing a side. And they chose humanity. Vexler saw his careful political advantage crumble. If he continued this assault, he might still win. But then he would face not just the coalition, but the major powers too. The Zothran Empire was strong, but not strong enough to fight the entire galaxy. He made a decision that would change his career, possibly end it. "All ships, cease fire. Fall back to minimum safe distance." On Earth, alarms went quiet. The Zothran fleet was withdrawing. Patrick looked at Jake, hardly believing it. "Are they retreating?" "Not retreating, Jake said, watching the tactical display. Reassessing. A communication request came through from the Zothran flagship. Patrick accepted it. Admiral Vexter appeared on screen, his alien features carefully neutral. Admiral Patrick Hayes, I propose a cessation of hostilities and negotiations. Why should we negotiate? Patrick asked. You invaded our system? Because continuing this battle serves no one, Vexter replied. You cannot win militarily, but I cannot win politically. The galaxy is turning against us. If we destroy Earth, we become the enemy of hundreds of species. Patrick looked at Kevin, who nodded slightly. What are you offering? Patrick asked. A new agreement. Not protectorate status. A genuine peace treaty. The Zothran will recognize human sovereignty. In exchange, you will join a new galactic framework, one where all species have a voice. It wasn't everything humanity wanted, but it was far better than conquest. I'll need to consult with our allies, Patrick said. Of course. You have 24 hours. The negotiations that followed were complex. Representatives from 73 species, plus the newly arrived major powers, had to agree on terms. It took 3 days of intense discussion. Deshva attended the negotiations, even though her health was failing. She sat beside Kevin, offering quiet wisdom. What they are really negotiating, she told him, is not just peace with the Zothran. They are negotiating a new way for the galaxy to work. She was right. The final agreement created a new galactic accord. Species would be judged not by their military power or age, but by their actions and relationships. The coalition that had defended Earth became the foundation for a new kind of alliance. Humanity didn't become the strongest power in the galaxy, but they became something perhaps more important. They became the moral center, the example that others looked to. The Zothran agreed to the terms, though many in their empire were unhappy. But Vexter understood something his leaders were slower to grasp. The universe was changing. The old ways of dominance through fear were ending. A new age was beginning. As the Zothran fleet left the Sol system, the coalition celebrated. It was a strange celebration, filled with grief for those lost, but also hope for what they had built. Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the Defiant, looking at Earth through the viewscreen. Her ship was barely functional, held together by repairs and hope. But they had survived? Captain, her Sorrenti engineering officer said, approaching her. I wanted to thank you. My people sent ships to help humanity. But you taught us what it means to fight for something bigger than yourself. Lisa shook her head. We all taught each other. That's what made the difference. Jake Morrison finally got to return home. But before he left, he met one last time with Deshva. She was dying, her old body finally giving out. But she seemed at peace. You changed the universe, Jake told her. You and your people. No, Deshva said softly. You changed it when you decided to help strangers in a nebula. We simply remembered what that meant. She passed away quietly that night, surrounded by both Velkans and humans. At her funeral, representatives from all 73 allied species attended. She was honored not just as an elder of her people, but as the one who had reminded the galaxy what honor meant, years past. The new galactic accord grew stronger. Species that had never worked together became partners. Trade increased. Scientific cooperation flourished. Conflicts that might have led to war were resolved through negotiation. Humanity spread through the stars, building new colonies. But they never forgot the lesson they had learned. Every human ship carried a simple directive: help those who need it. Expect nothing in return. Build relationships based on kindness. Lieutenant Maya Stevens was one of the new generation, born after the war. She commanded a small patrol ship, the Explorer, on the frontier. One day, her sensors detected a distress signal. Unknown vessel in distress, her sensor officer reported. Unidentified species. No strategic value in helping them. Maya thought about the stories she had heard. About Commander Morrison helping the Velkans. About 73 species risking everything for Earth. About how small acts of kindness had changed the galaxy. Set course to intercept, she ordered. Full speed. Captain, we're not required to respond to every distress call. Maya smiled. No, we're not required. But we're human. We help because we can. Because it's right. And because you never know when a simple act of kindness will change the universe. The explorer changed course, heading toward the distressed ship. Somewhere in the void of space, another favor was being given. Another debt of honor was being created. And the universe tilted a little more toward the light on Earth. In a small garden where an old man had once shared tea with an alien elder, a monument stood. It showed a human and a Velkin, hands joined. The inscription was simple. A favor to humanity is never lost, and their payback can tilt the universe. Below that, in smaller letters, a second message. In memory of all those who chose kindness over calculation, who built bridges instead of walls, and who proved that the smallest act of good can reshape the stars. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would echo through the ages. Power could conquer worlds, but kindness could transform universes. And humanity, those strange, generous, impossible humans, had shown everyone the way. The story didn't end there. It never really ended, because every day on 1,000 worlds, someone made a choice to help instead of ignore, to give instead of take, to risk instead of calculate. And each time they did, they honored the memory of Commander Jake Morrison, Elder HFY, and all those who fought in the Battle of Earth. They honored the idea that the universe could be better, kinder, more connected. They honored the truth that a favor given freely is never truly lost. It echoes through time and space.